Welcome in, Bills Mafia, and welcome back to the Go Bills podcast. I am your host and founder of the channel, Brett. Glad to be with you on this beautiful Tuesday night. We're going to be reviewing the game of the last week, the Minnesota Vikings and the Buffalo Bills, and we're going to go over the highlights of the game, talk about the biggest takeaways of the game, we're going to talk about where the Bills can get better, highlight the AFC East race, and look ahead to what the Bills have ahead in the next couple of weeks as far as the games that they'll have. So let's get this thing rocking and rolling. To begin, the 7-1 Minnesota Vikings took on the Buffalo Bills. The Bills were coming off of a 20-17 loss to the New York Jets. The Bills were hampered by the injury bug, and they were uncertain if they were going to have Josh Allen in this game. And luckily they did have him, which was great. They were able to get him back, and he was able to play. We knew that there was a lot of uncertainty throughout the week. There was some talk about Case Keenum starting instead of Josh Allen, but remarkably, he was able to recover. He was able to get back to normal shape, and he played the whole entire game, which was fantastic. And we were able to see Josh do what Josh does best. And there's some good things, some bad things, but overall, Josh played in the game, which is fantastic. And I was looking forward to that. But let's go over the biggest takeaways of this game, starting with the biggest takeaway of the game for me on offense. The biggest takeaway for me on offense was the turnovers by Josh Allen were killer. This is the biggest thing for me. Let's begin with the first turnover. The decision by Ken Dorsey to go for it on 4th and 2 was a good decision, but on the other hand, it was the execution of the play that was not very good. Getting picked off by Patrick Peterson and having the field change from the 6-yard line to the 34-yard line of the Bills was what really affected that play. And if Buffalo would have scored in that situation, they would have had 7 points. Whereas the Vikings ended up scoring in that play, and it ended up becoming a 14-point swing. And that 14-point swing could have been very beneficial for the Bills because they wouldn't have had to play. They would have been up by so much, and they would have been able to do what the defense does best and play the pass. But that's the unfortunate thing of the first one. The second Josh Allen turnover was a fumble by Josh Allen at our own 1-yard line, and that led to a Minnesota Vikings touchdown. And I don't really love the play call that Buffalo had in this situation. And I think that the play call was just not right. I think Buffalo could have went with some different play calls, maybe a short yard pass, which has been working for the Bills left and right, and they could have utilized that. But they ended up going with the QB sneak, and what happened? Josh Allen botches the snap, and Gabe Davis gives him a little push, and Buffalo didn't recover the fumble, and they struggled with that. But, I mean, the biggest thing for me is they could have threw a short pass, got the 10 yards, and then been able to kneel. So I don't think that the play call in that situation was correct. And the situation was bad. Josh hadn't been under center a lot in the game. They could have ran a shotgun play, but they decided to go with the QB sneak, or they could have just ended up getting a safety, and that would have been better than getting the touchdown. So there's so many different options that Buffalo could have done in that situation, so I don't really love the play call. I think the play call was incorrect, but it just wasn't the right thing. And the biggest thing that I see in this situation where you're at the 1-yard line is the Bills' offensive line was not creating leverage in short yardage. They have not done a good job in that situation, and they're not getting the push that they need to get Josh forward. And I just didn't love the play call. They could have done a better one, and it would have been a better decision by the offense in that play. Now let's go to the third turnover, which was the most costly one, the third and final play of the game. The biggest thing with this one was the execution of the play. I do think that it was we were in a good situation. We were at the 20-yard line. I just think that the biggest thing that we saw in that play was there's so many different receivers that were open in that situation, and it just wasn't the right call. Josh hesitated a little bit. They could have threw it to Gabe Davis or Isaiah McKenzie in that situation, or he could have took the check down where he had Devin Singletary wide open. And that would have been a nice touch pass to Devin Singletary, and he probably would have gotten to like the 5-yard line. Then he could have ran a couple of runs and scored the touchdown. But instead, Josh got impatient, and he decided to go for a big play, and he had the interception. And this led to Patrick Peterson's second interception of the game. And while there's these bad decisions and throws have cost Buffalo the last 2 games, and in the last 10 quarters of football, Josh has thrown 6 interceptions, which is starting to become alarming. While many people are thinking that it might be Ken Dorsey's fault for these interceptions because of the way that the offenses ran, I don't put a lot of the pressure on Ken Dorsey. I think that most of it comes down to Josh Allen. Josh Allen's the one that's throwing the ball. Ken Dorsey's the one that's calling the plays. And these plays that he's calling are just not being executed right. And I do like the idea of taking the home run plays and everything, but you have to make sure that you're being responsible with the football. And that's the biggest takeaway that I have for this is Josh didn't take care of the football, and that's one of the reasons why we lost the game. If you look at the turnover battle in this game, Buffalo had 4 turnovers compared to the Vikings 2 turnovers. That's one of the reasons why we lost this game. And while I strongly believe that Buffalo will get this figured out over the next few weeks, it is worrisome to see. Next, and this is the big one for me, I looked back at this game and I wanted to give it a lot of extra thought for the viewers and everything and talk about some important things. And I didn't want to go over it on Sunday because it was just right after the game. There's a lot of emotions that you have, and you can start to get a little depressed. You can talk about the wrong things. You can have a bad attitude about it. So I wanted to make sure I gave you guys a really good show, and I want to stay positive with this. That's the biggest thing, because we are a good football team. We have a great team. We just need to get some small things figured out, and we will get it figured out, and we'll be even better come playoff time. The second thing is the Bills in the first half did a really good job on offense. They were mixing plays left and right between the passes that were short yardage passes versus the runs that we've had as well. We were doing a good job of mixing them in. Very good. But the biggest thing that I take away from this is in the second half, the Bills abandoned the run, and then they became one-dimensional. And I titled this, "The Bills Abandoned the Run and Became One-Dimensional." If you look at the first half, Buffalo did a good job of mixing the plays in, and this allowed Devin Singletary to have 2 rushing touchdowns. But in the second half, the Bills abandoned that run, and they've done it over the past few weeks. I don't know if it's trust in the running game, but they abandoned the run, and Buffalo started to throw the ball on almost every single play. And you put so much pressure on Josh to make those throws and make big plays, and it was not the right time. You're up in the game. You should be running the ball. You should be managing the clock, which is the biggest things, and you have a 2-possession lead. And at one point, we had a 3-possession lead, which we've had in the past 3 games. We've had 3-possession leads, and we saw those 3-possession leads diminish, and then we come into whether it's a 10-point game or a 7-point game. And then we start to think that we have to throw the ball now, which is not the case. We need to run the ball and utilize the clock. The clock management in this game was atrocious, especially in the second half. We need to be running the ball more, which it was working in our favor. We were averaging good numbers. And while Devin Singletary wasn't spectacular in this game, we were doing a good job of running the ball, not only with Devin Singletary in the first half, but we were utilizing Josh Allen's legs. We talked about it in the pregame show. We talked about what the average was that the Vikings were giving up to quarterbacks, and it was like a 5.2 average. And that average was very, very high. So if we were to utilize Josh Allen's legs in the second half, utilize Devin Singletary, and allowed Buffalo to be able to utilize the clock, take more time off the clock, and not allow the Vikings offense to get back on the field. That would have been better. But instead, we threw the ball too much, and this allowed the Vikings to only have to play the pass. And what did the Vikings do that the Jets did last week? They started playing that 4-7 base where you have 4 linemen that are rushing the quarterback. You drop 7 into coverage, and you see this happen all the time with Josh Allen. He becomes impatient, and he starts to press the ball down the field, and this allows the turnovers to happen. This is what we saw this week, and it's something that we're going to see a lot more of. You're going to see more 4-7 bases, and you in these situations, you have to run the ball. You have 4 men versus your 5 men on the line. And if you run the ball, you will have success in those situations. 5 versus 4 is better than 7 versus 6 in coverage. It's just a matter of facts. You have to utilize what the best plan is. And Buffalo didn't do that in the second half. If you look at the second half, Buffalo has not scored a second half touchdown since the Kansas City game. And they've been leading by 3 possessions in every single game. You got to do a better job on offense of getting points on the board, especially in the second half. And we haven't done a good job of that. And that falls on Ken Dorsey, in my opinion. Let's go over the stats for the Bills in this game. Starting with Josh Allen, who was 29 for 43 for 330 yards, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, along with that fumble. He also had 6 rushes for 84 yards in the game as well. Singletary had 13 carries for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns, so good numbers by him. Stephon Diggs had an excellent game with 12 catches for 128 yards. Gabe Davis had 6 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown. Now let's move on to the defense, starting with an issue that I saw with the defense, which was not being able to stop Justin Jefferson. And while a lot of people would say that I'm being very critical of this, and I am being critical of this, but it's one thing that you've seen over the past few weeks from the Bills. We haven't been able to stop the number 1 wide receiver over the past few weeks. And while Buffalo's cornerbacks did a very good job in this game, and I give a lot of credit to Christian Benford as well as Dane Jackson, they did a good job in coverage, but they didn't get the incompletions as well as pass breakups that I wanted to see in this game. If you look at the game, you could see that Justin Jefferson, anytime the ball was thrown his way, he was catching the ball. And it just seemed like if Kirk Cousins threw the ball in his vicinity, he was coming up with a big play. There were so many plays, in my opinion, that Buffalo could have came down with and maybe minimize these numbers on the catches from the 9 catches that he had for 193 yards. It could have been a lot less. But Buffalo wasn't able to come down with those plays. Although a next-gen stat had that Jefferson's 9 catches that he had, of his 10 catches that he had, 9 of them were less than a 50% chance of catching the ball. And the biggest play that I think that the Bills could have done a better job of covering Jefferson on was the play on 4th and 18 where Justin Jefferson was able to come up with that one-handed catch. And you saw that Cam Lewis, who was making his first start and an undrafted free agent from Buffalo, made his first start in the game. He should have been able to knock that ball down, but he didn't come up with the knockdown. And while Justin Jefferson is an excellent receiver and he will be a focal point in the Vikings offense, I do think that the Bills could have done a better job of covering him, possibly putting 2 guys on him, and then allowing Adam Thielen to be able to be utilized in the offense. And that's just my personal opinion. I think that Buffalo could have done a better job of covering him. And I think that Buffalo will do a better job of covering different receivers when they do get Tre'Davious White back. I know there's some uncertainty of when he's going to be coming back or if he does come back. There's been some talk about from Sean McDermott saying that he's just not ready yet. And I think that that's something that you could develop into something else. There's been rumors that have been floating around from different fans saying that maybe Tre'Davious White might retire. And while I don't think that's necessarily true, I think that he's just not comfortable being back yet. And I think that this is the time that you should be playing Tre'Davious White. You got the Cleveland Browns coming up. They have Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. They have a decent receiver in Amari Cooper, but they don't have anybody else. So you can put Dane Jackson on Amari Cooper, and you can put Tre'Davious White on other receivers, and then allow him to establish his confidence and get back into the game. Look ahead to the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have Amon St. Brown. There's not anybody that really, other than that they have that's good. So I'm confident in Buffalo to be able to cover the other receivers besides St. Brown. And you can, again, put Dane Jackson on St. Brown. Look ahead to the New England Patriots. Buffalo can put Tre'Davious White on almost any receiver there, and he's going to lock him up. He's better than every receiver. The only good receiver that the New England Patriots have at this time is Jacoby Myers. So if you look ahead to these games, this is the perfect time that you can play Tre'Davious White and establish him to get his confidence. But when will they do that is unknown. Moving on, the second point I had was the third and fourth down efficiency by the Bills on not being able to get off the field has been atrocious over the last few weeks. If you look at these third and fourth downs, they're third and longs, and Buffalo should be coming up off the field easily. But the biggest thing that I have from this is they're not able to convert, and I thought about why that is. If you look at these situations, the Bills are not able to get pressure on quarterbacks. Looking at this game against the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins was passing on 54 plays. And I do think that there was some good times where Buffalo was able to get pressure on Kirk Cousins, but it wasn't consistent enough. Von Miller had a good game, in my opinion, did a good job, but that next man up on the opposite side of him was not there. And I look at this, and I think that this is the biggest reason Buffalo struggled in this game was getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And I think Buffalo could do a better job. And I think they will do a better job when they get Greg Russo back. But Buffalo wasn't able to get enough pressure on quarterbacks. And I think that it was from the outside defensive end position, as well as the interior defensive line. While Ed Oliver had a good game, he had some great stops in the run game, and he was able to get some quarterback pressures on Cousins. That consistency that you see was not there. And I thought that getting Von Miller would allow Ed Oliver to get more interior pressure on different quarterbacks, but you haven't seen that yet. And I want to see more of the interior pressure on the quarterbacks. And I've thought about this a little bit, and I think that Buffalo on third down should start playing Ed Oliver and Tim Settle a little bit more, as well as Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips. So I think that those matchups would be better for Buffalo to get more pressure on quarterbacks. So my biggest thing is just get more pressure on the quarterbacks and get a little bit more consistent in those pressures. Get more quarterback hits, get more pressures, and make the timing of the quarterback to where he has to get the ball out a little bit sooner than he's comfortable with. As far as the secondary, I thought the secondary did a very good job in this game overall, but there's just some plays where there's inconsistencies and plays where I think that we could have gotten better. And I got to give a lot of praise to sixth-rounder Damar Hamlin. He did an excellent job in this game, 11 tackles on the game, making some big plays in the run game, as well as having some good pass breakups as well. As far as his counterpart in Cam Lewis, I think that he just, for his first game out there, he did a decent job, but there's plays where he could have done a better job. If you look at the play with Justin Jefferson, he could have batted that ball down and had an incompletion. But instead, he went for the ball, tried to get the interception, and became the hero. He didn't have to do that. He needed to just bat the ball down and get it down. Then if you look back to the play where Dalvin Cook was able to score that touchdown, AJ Epinesa and Matt Milano played too far inside on that play. And then Damar Hamlin was covered by a receiver. And the angle that Cam Lewis took on that run was atrocious. It was a bad angle, and it allowed Dalvin Cook to be able to score that touchdown. And I also think that in the second half, the biggest thing was Buffalo missed Tremaine Edmonds as well. They didn't have Tremaine Edmonds out there because of the groin injury. And I think that this was a big, especially in the pass game, but I think it was bigger in the run game as well. Not having your focal point on offense and your commander on offense allowed the Vikings to be able to pinpoint different areas of the Bills defense and be able to pick on those areas left and right. Let's move on to the special teams from the Bills, and I think the special teams did a fantastic job in this game. I got to give a lot of credit to Nyheim Hines, who had a great game in the punt return game, as well as fellow practice squad player Duke Johnson, who was called up from the practice squad. I think he had a great game, great job on kick returns, and if I'm Buffalo, I think about calling him up next week just to give a little spark to the kick return game. And I think that he could be a focal point in this offense too. Sam Martin had a great game as well. 51-yard average. Excellent job on the 3 punts that he had. Perfect numbers. And you can't get any better than what Tyler Bass did in this game. Perfect numbers as well. 3 for 3 on the field goals. And did an excellent job. And he was a big reason for why Buffalo was able to get this game into overtime and get points on the board. So I got to give all the special teams credit. I don't talk about it enough, and I don't think enough podcasts talk about it, the special teams. So I got to give a lot of credit to Smiley's crew. I think they did an excellent job in this game. Let's move on to another segment, and let's talk about something that we haven't really talked about much in previous shows. But we're going to talk about how we did and see how I did from last week in my takeaways of the game. Talk about what the takeaways I had from the game and the keys to the game, what we could have done to win this game. So let's go over my keys to the game from last week. And I started off with being able to stop the run. And while I think Buffalo did a good job of stopping the run, I just think that towards the end of the game, we didn't do enough to be able to stop the run. And that's the reason why Buffalo was not able to win this game. Another thing I talked about was being smart with the football. And I don't think Buffalo was smart enough with the football. In the first half, we did an excellent job of being able to hit the short throws and take what the defense gives us. But we had a ton of turnovers. We lost the turnover battle 4-2. And that's the reason why we lost this game. Another thing we talked about was staying in your gaps. Buffalo did a pretty good job of that overall. And I think that that's a key. I'm going to give them the point for that, being able to stop the gaps, and they did a good job on that. I felt like the next key was important. They did a decent job of this. They were doing a good job of tackling. But again, there's a couple plays that you saw where we were arm tackling again, and they just weren't able to tackle. And there's plays where we just didn't get our hands on the ball carrier, and that's what caused big runs. So that's another area. And then this is the biggest key that I had, and this was for Josh Allen, was take what the defense gives you. And he did that really well in the first half, but in the second half, he just didn't do enough. So that's one of the reasons why Buffalo lost the game. As far as the score predictions, I was definitely off on this. I said 24-14 for the Bills, and I was off on that. Ended up being 33-30 in favor of the Minnesota Vikings in overtime. And I was off on that. So, guys, I'm sorry about that, but I was just a little bit off on that. Let's move ahead to the AFC East race. Talk about that a little bit. The Bills moved to third place in the AFC East. They are no longer the number one seed in the AFC as well. Moving to sixth place in the AFC playoff standings right now. And they are now in third place in the division. The Dolphins are now 7-3, moving into first place. The Jets are 6-3 and in second place. Bills at 6-3, and the Patriots at 5-4. As for what's ahead for the Bills will now play the Cleveland Browns this Sunday at 1 p.m. in Orchard Park, New York. And this game is going to be a game where Buffalo is going to be playing in some snow conditions. There's about 3 feet. I think it's about 3 feet of snow that's coming towards Buffalo. From what I understand, it's about 2.5 feet that's coming towards Buffalo. So, I mean, this could be a game where Buffalo is going to have to rely on being able to stop the run. And you saw it the last time that there was a snow game with this much snow coming down, where Buffalo played the New England Patriots in this game, and Buffalo was able to stop the run pretty good. But the biggest thing was the Patriots threw the ball 3 times. So my biggest question mark for this game is, can the Bills fix these issues in the run game? And I think they will fix things in the run game. I think that Josh is going to be fine. I think he's going to get it under control. I just think it's a little bit of some hiccups that you see from a normal team. There's not going to be perfect every week, but we will get back to normal Buffalo Bills football very shortly. And we got some good running backs that we're going to be playing over the next few weeks as well. If you look ahead to the games that we have with the Cleveland Browns, they have Nick Chubb. They have some great running backs in Cleveland. Look ahead to the Detroit Lions, Jamal Williams. I always get them confused, Javonte and Jamal Williams. But Jamal Williams, an excellent running back for the Detroit Lions, facing him on Thanksgiving. Good running back there. And then you look ahead to the New England Patriots, and the Patriots have some great running backs they have over the past few years in Ramondre Stevenson. Excellent running back that we're going to have to face as well. So we're going to have to get this running game figured out very shortly, and I think that Buffalo will get it straightened out. Just got to be able to hit the right gaps at the right time, and we'll get it straightened out. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Go Bills podcast on all our social media platforms. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and all our other platforms that I might have forgot. You can see it on the scrolling ticker coming on the board right now. So if I forgot any, I apologize. But don't forget about that. And don't forget to look ahead to this week coming up. We have some shows coming up later on in the week. We'll have our game preview this Friday at 8 p.m., as well as our pregame show on Sunday at 12:30 p.m. on Instagram and Facebook. And you can also find the preview show on YouTube as well. We will have our halftime show on Instagram and Facebook at the halftime of the Bills and Cleveland Browns game. And we'll also have our post-game show, which we will be doing immediately after the Bills game this week. I know that last week we said that we were going to do this, and I apologize about that. I had a little bit of a congestion in my throat and lost my voice. So this is the first time that I got my voice back, so I'm glad to have it back. And I'm just glad to be able to produce some more content for you guys. So this has been the Go Bills podcast, and we will see you later in the week with more amazing shows. As always, go Bills, and we will see you later in the week. Stay safe, y'all.